Yeah.
This kind of brings me to here. Is this the Monuments Men?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our audience is responsible for several pieces. I know at least two, but I think several pieces. One of them was significant. They came to us, maybe 8 years ago or 10 years ago, and several members of this audience went, oh, man, I had a dad who was in World War II. He said he picked this up. I don't know what it is. And they called, and 2 or 3 pieces at least were returned.
Right. Well, you know, I think there's a lot of things happening. Some things were trophies of war. One soldier finds another soldier in whatever state they are, and they take their dagger, they take their pistol. Then there's another thing happening where Germans are selling items to get bread. I mean, they are selling things, you know, just on the street corner, trying to get GIs who definitely had more expendable income than anybody in mainland Europe at that time. So they say, well, here's not euros.
Marks.
Right.
And they have this priceless artifact they end up with, and they don't know what it is or where it came from, but it stands in.
There's another part of this that we haven't talked about at all, which is that the Nazis themselves, Hitler had personal buyers who went out for him, as did Goebbels. I mean, they were collecting Judaica from all over Europe and the East, and non-Jewish materials, great artworks, and shipping them back to the Reich or warehousing them in caves and other areas throughout Europe. They wanted to eradicate Jews, but they wanted to create a Jewish museum, a museum of all of these things that represented this evil Jewish entity.
And that leads right into this.
Yeah.
So this came to us from Robert Etzel and the Monuments Men Foundation, a local Dallas organization that does a lot of good work. And it was created by and for the workers at Offenbach Archival Depot. And I think a lot of people may have seen the movie Monuments Men, which really deals with sculpture, artwork, and the amazing efforts they went through to try to save so many of these priceless artifacts.
Just name the other country that would have done that. I just am so proud.
Well, there wasn't.
I watched that movie. I was so proud of us.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And also, as an archivist, I'm like, oh, the one time I'm going to get a call, maybe have my day, because they were all. I mean, let's be honest, there were a lot of nerds that got called out to go. So I can really relate to that. So Offenbach was a little different from the main Monuments Men story we hear, because this was really a depot where they were gathering books, published materials, rare documents, and then specifically Jewish religious materials. So just to give you an idea.
This is German?
So this is in Offenbach.
This is what we did.
We did this.
Okay.
This was the Monuments Men, and Offenbach is where they took in all of their printed materials.
Right. Sarah, if you don't just kind of gently...
Yeah, absolutely.
So here you just get a sense of the scale. They've got trains, trucks, pulling in this stuff. It's coming from all over the Reich. You know, most of the material was hoarded in Germany because they had plans to build a series of museums, one of them focusing on Judaism, which is a little bit bizarre to me, but, you know. Here's
Judaism
a sense,
and Jews.
Right. Here's a sense of just the scale as an archivist / librarian that strikes terror in my heart.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, there was a small band of people, experts in various fields and languages, who were brought in to try to identify and specifically repatriate these materials. These materials were taken out of, they would take a whole synagogue's library, they would take a whole Jewish family's library, they would take every single thing out of their house.
Returning those would have been almost impossible.
Amazing.
Well, the synagogues are gone.
They did a lot.
The people are gone. Yeshivas, there were whole yeshivas that if they managed to get out, you know, higher institutions of Jewish learning, they relocated to Jerusalem if they could, and so there's no place to send this stuff anymore.
Right.
They're gone.
Yeah, and a lot of it ends up in Western museums, and it's given to other synagogues in the West that survived and all of this. So here they are they're drying out a lot of materials here. They're trying to identify things just step by step, just painstaking.
By the way, this always reminds me, in Iraq, when we went in the second time, Saddam Hussein warehoused Jewish materials in the basement of one of his torture facilities, and it flooded. And so we had U.S. troops who were assigned to do the same thing. The material is now here in the States.
And that's why it's so interesting to study history, because you say, you know, there's not anything new under the sun. That's my grandfather used to say it, and he was right.
Especially when it comes to Jewish persecution.
Yeah.
It is the same story over and over again.
Right.
It is, unfortunately.
So here they're listing out the percentages of what languages were represented in the book. So Hebrew is 55%. Right, and then of course you have German language books about Judaism as the next category. This is an astonishing photograph. As Sarah says, you would never see so many Torahs again.
So these were all Torahs that were stolen from communities that were destroyed and synagogues that were burned to the ground. And there was a guy assigned to these who he was trying to do a number of things. He was trying to figure out the age of them, where they had potentially been written, what they had been written for, who they had been written for, because there's a whole back history, but because they're handwritten,
each Torah has a story.
You can trace scribal signatures, techniques, these kinds of things. But there were thousands of them. This is only a small pile that they managed to.
Amazing.
Turn one more page and then we have to take a break.
Okay, let me just show you the scope. So this shows you where all these books are coming from and going back to. It's basically an idea map of where they're trying to repatriate these materials.
It also gives you a sense of the sheer scope of Nazi activity.
Well, and imagine the language skills. You know, between us, you know Hebrew, I know German.
Well,
we
can
read
Russian, but that's about it.
And between us, we do a really funny job at trying to understand Yiddish.
Yeah.
But
we
make it through.
Yeah.
But you know, when you get into all these languages, that's part of their struggle. Is they had librarians. This is amazing to me. They had librarians looking at printers' marks. And trying to identify that and making little cards, like card catalogs, trying to say, okay, if you see this mark again, we know it goes to this library or it comes to this community. So they had a system.
What's in the box?
This is one of our premier artifacts. It's going to take both of us to show you. So this is a flag that was captured by the Texas Division, the 36th Infantry Division.
An Arrowhead Division.
The Texas Division. And there's a nice little hint on the flag telling you that happened. Okay, good. There you go.
This won't hurt anything else here, so.
And
Look at this.
You know, you have to imagine this is first American boots on the ground during the invasion.
Taken from where?
Salerno. Which so there's a huge battle for Salerno, and
This is with Patton then.
well,
Do
it's
you know?
with the Third Army.
It's Third Army, but it's a subdivision. So it's 141st, but so if it's Third Army, it is Patton. Although I don't know these guys. I don't think these guys were tank guys.
Okay.
Well, they were a transportation unit, and
this,
so
how
there's
beautiful
this is the Texas Division, and so what's really poignant, they all inscribe this, and then there's a letter from a local Texas guy to his wife, from Buddy to his wife Kate, and he's saying essentially every Nazi flag we tear down brings us one step closer to home to you.
We show this when we do artifact explorations and things with our museum members, and we call this the Nazi flag love letter. And people always look at us like we're bizarre until they hear the story. And it's remarkable. It's really remarkable.
Well, and to me, it just makes me think, you know, these guys knew what they were fighting for.
Yeah, they did.
And they knew it was serious. They knew it was, you know, the big time. And they weren't messing around. They were fighting for the freedom of the world. The whole world, you know. And so they rip this flag down, and they all take the time to inscribe it because they know it's important.
And so this is 43. This is before the Normandy invasion.
September.
These are the first guys. These are the first guys in. In Italy.
Right. And you know, I don't think we always think about the Italian theater as being dominated by Nazis, which the Nazis had pushed down, and that's why the U.S. was trying to push back up. And there was some fierce, fierce fighting that happened in Salerno.
I love the look of this. This here, it's very, I don't know if you've ever seen Walt Disney art from World War I, but it's very World War I Walt Disney art.
I'm sure they said, hey guys, anybody good at drawing? Can you do good letters, you know?
Really well done.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
We'll come back and talk about Eichmann. So for people who don't know who Eichmann is, who is he?
So Adolf Eichmann was a high-level functionary in the SS, amongst other things. So in the terror apparatus of the Nazi administration. He ultimately moved up even higher, and he reported to Himmler, and he was in many ways the man who is known as the architect of the final solution, which is probably a bit of a misnomer, but he certainly was the one who was responsible for making sure that transports ran, and he was transporting
the one that had
Jews.
Big meeting at the
He
dock
was
house
part.
someplace?
He was part of the Wannsee conference. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
But he made sure the transports ran, so that was his job.
And then significantly, he got captured and was tried for mass murder in Israel in 1961. And these
he lived free until then.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he actually was captured by the Americans, escaped from a camp where he was being held in 45, 46, made his way through a secret underground railroad of sorts to the Middle East, and from the Middle East into Argentina by 1950.
Where Nazis were
There were Nazi networks, and he lived there openly.